Hi everyone. For those of you that watched my previous video, you know that I just got the Samsung French door refrigerator. Got it installed not too long ago, and while I was looking at it, I discovered that it did not have a built-in water filter for it. So I went out and bought a Samsung water filter. This is actually the one that is recommended for the refrigerator. Of course, it's the Samsung model. And you can see this is part number DA29-10105J. Now this is an inline water filter, so what that means is that you're actually expected to cut the refrigerator line, which is right here. You're meant to cut it somewhere along this line and splice this in between it. I personally did not like the idea of cutting my water line in my refrigerator just for that. So I actually decided to buy a different inline water filter instead, and I went with the Culligan. The reason why I did that is because, as you can see, I went ahead and just mounted it on the wall. But this is not going to have to be, I don't have to cut open my water line in the back of my refrigerator in order to use this, which I really didn't want to do. So I went ahead and mounted it. You can see here, it's got 3 screws. I mounted it into the stud in the wall to make sure it's nice and sturdy. Let's go ahead and put the cap on it. Okay. Now, for this, other than the water filter that you need, there are a few other extra things you had to purchase. For one, I had to buy some refrigerator hosing. My line is a 1/4 inch. Probably most refrigerators are going to be 1/4 inch lines. What you're going to have to keep an eye on though is the size of your source. For me, my source is a 1/4 inch. So on top of buying the tubing, I had to buy 1/4 inch compression fittings. And this will go over the hose. I actually have one of them put on already. As you can see here, it will go over the end of the hose. And this is what I'm going to use to screw into here. I'm going to go ahead and move it apart a little bit. As you can see, there's a little metal piece that comes with the compression fitting, which is this one right here. And what you do with that is you would first slide the nut over the hose, and then you would take that metal tubing, you would actually push it inside of the plastic tube. One thing that does is it keeps this tubing from crimping, and because if you crimp this, it's plastic, it could crack and cause it to leak. But it's also support for this. So with that on it, it keeps the nut on and it doesn't just slide off very easily. You'd have to put a little bit extra force to try to pull it out. So what I'm going to have to do here is I will need to measure the distance from my source to the inlet of the Culligan, and then from there, since this refrigerator does not have a water dispenser, it's only an ice maker, I had to buy a relief valve for it as well. So I went with another Culligan one, and this one is part number FVK-100, and basically it's got a little T-connector here, and it's got an on-off valve. How that will look is I will have a small little tube coming out here. It will go into the T-valve, and then I'll have a tiny little tube going down the T-valve, which will connect to the on-off valve, and then I'll have another tube running down, essentially to the ground, or however high you want it, and then it'll just be left dangling like it is. And then the other end of this T-tube, I will have the tube come out, and that is what I will use to connect to my refrigerator hose itself. That way there's no cutting of my refrigerator line. I will just go ahead and screw it into the water line directly into the refrigerator. So if for whatever reason, if when I decide to get another refrigerator, I'll still have my water filter here, and all I gotta do is just unscrew it and take it off, and the refrigerator line will be perfectly intact, no issues, no problems or anything like that at all. So I'm going to go ahead and start measuring out the size of the lines that I need, and I will go ahead and cut it. When you do, is like for some, when you screw it onto here, you may or may not need some Teflon tape. If you try without it and you find that when you tighten it up it starts to leak, you'll need to remove it and you'll need to use the Teflon tape instead. And that will help prevent the water leaking, or it'll help stop the water leaking. Alright, and of course naturally you want to make sure your water source is off. Mine's already turned off, so I'm good right there. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and measure out my lines. Go ahead and cut them down to size, and then I will get back with you as soon as I'm done with that. Alright, well, I got my hoses cut. I went ahead and cut one probably about 1.5 feet, 2 feet long, and this one is going to go to my source, and the other end is going to go here into the inlet side of my water filter. As I said before, you want to make sure your water line is off before you unscrew it, otherwise you're going to have a pretty nice mess. I've already turned mine off, and I've already loosened it up as well, so I can go ahead and just take this off. You'll probably need a tool to loosen this normally though, but like I said, I already loosened it up. See? And with mine, the previous installer went ahead and put Teflon tape on here, so before you can install the new line or screw the new line in or even put new Teflon on, you have to remove the old one. So let's go ahead and do that. You want to make sure you get as much of it off as you can. And now I'm going to go ahead and put some new Teflon tape on here as well. One thing you have to remember is that when you wrap the Teflon tape on here, you want to wrap it in the same direction that you'll be screwing the nut onto it in order to make it tight. So when you're tightening it, you'll actually be going clockwise, and when you loosen it, it's counterclockwise. Knowing that, this will be wrapped around going clockwise direction. Okay, well, I actually need to put the camera back down again because unfortunately I'm still remodeling and I have not had a chance to dig out my tripod. So I'm going to go ahead and put the camera down and I'll be right back. Alright, and now as you can see, I've got the Teflon on here. I went ahead and just left a little bit off just so that you can see the direction that I did it in. And let's go ahead and finish tightening this up here. So that is on. Alright, and now I just need to go ahead and get the tubing, and I'll go ahead and screw that one on. Alright, so I'll go ahead and screw the compression nut on here. Now with these, this is brass on brass, so you have to be kind of careful with it. If you over tighten it, you could actually damage it. So you really only want to do hand tighten as much as you can, and then take a wrench and go just a little bit, like half a turn. Oop, need a bigger wrench. Alright, you just want to go half a turn with it. Oh, that's a quarter. Almost a half, that's good. Not a full half, but that's fine. So now I got that hooked up. Let's go ahead and take that line and push it in into the water filter. Alright, push that in as far as it'll go. Alright, and there we've got water for the source feeding in to the inlet valve of the Culligan. And let me go ahead and get the next tubing as well as the T-line and the on-off valve. And then let's go ahead and hook that up next. And what's going to be, we'll hook up next is going to be this. Let me go ahead and get it out. Alright. And here you can pretty much, here's the T-valve. Comes with one tiny little tubing and the on-off valve. From here you can pretty much decide on how you want to hook it up. What I think I'm going to be doing, you can either just set up something small, just hook it up close here if you want. What I'm thinking I might do is just go ahead and make it just a little bit long and mount it and hook the hose itself to the wall, or actually the T-valve. I'm thinking I might hook it to the wall and then have it come out, but I'm not sure yet. I'm take a look at it and see what I'll decide. Alright, so what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm just going to go ahead and keep these lines small, so I'll go ahead and use this one. We'll connect to the out. Make sure you got it in there nice and tight. And let's go ahead and hook the T-valve up to this. Just all you gotta do is just push that in until you can't push it in anymore. Because the last thing you want is for this thing to come out when it's turned on. Alright, and I went ahead and just cut another tiny little one. And that one will go underneath. Actually, I may even cut this one down a little bit shorter. Okay, push that in all the ways. Okay. And then we'll go ahead and hook up the on-off valve next to that. And you know, I actually may cut that just a little bit shorter. Let me go ahead and do that real quick. And get my shears here. Okay. You want to make sure you get a nice, when you cut it, you want to try to make it as much of a 90-degree cut as you can. You don't want this to be cut at an angle because you want it to sit in flush inside of here. Right, so let's go ahead and push this up in here next. Okay, oh. You definitely want to make sure that you don't crank it because this is just plastic. If you do that, you might put a crack in it, or at least it'll fatigue it enough where it could be damaged later on. And then I got another hose here that I'm going to use for the drainage. Let's go ahead and hook this up in here now. I'm actually going to put the camera down for this. I need two hands. I don't want to risk damaging the tube. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. I'll be right back. Alright, well, I am sorry, but I'm actually pretty much done with this already. I had recorded the whole completion of it, but my battery died in my camera and it corrupted the last part of the video. So I'll just talk you through what I did here. So as you can see, I went ahead and added another line here. Went ahead and used a short one. And as you can see, it's putting a lot of weight on here. And partially probably because of the fact that I reused the metal refrigerator hose instead of doing a really long one of these going straight to the refrigerator. Biggest reason I did that was because of the fact that this is flexible, and if this gets kinked or anything, it's not a big issue. It won't be an issue at all because of the fact that it is metal. So what I'm actually planning to do is going to the hardware store, and I'll go ahead and buy a mount for this. And I'm going to go ahead and mount this to the wall so that it relieves pressure off of this hose and inside this connector here as well, because I don't want the hose working its way out. And here you see I've got a long hose here. And this will be, the reason for this is, I'm not sure if I mentioned it earlier before, is because of the fact that my refrigerator has an ice maker only and no water dispenser. Whenever you replace these filters, you want to be able to use this to release some of the pressure out of the water line after you've turned off the water source. So you turn off the water source, you would open this valve, and you can release some of the water out of here, release some of the pressure, replace this. When you put a new one on it, you want to go ahead and leave this valve open and just have this tube inside of a bucket or something. Turn your water line on, and you want the water to flow through the filter and then flow out of this, because that way you get a lot of the charcoal and sediment out of the filter first instead of it going through your water line and being frozen inside your ice. With the water dispenser, you don't need this because you can just run the water dispenser until you drain out all the sediment out of the water lines from your replacement filter. And this is pretty much it. Everything's all hooked up now. I don't have a bucket handy on me, so I don't plan to turn this on just yet, but I do need to go ahead and drain it since it is a brand new filter. And again, I apologize that I didn't record me installing the last part of it, but you can see what I did here though. I just went ahead and put another hose, shoved it in here. It's a compression fitting, so it should hold. And my compression nut here is actually a female, and my hose is a female. So what I had to do is get a male-to-male adapter in between the two. That way the two will connect together. And again, just like the source, you don't want to make a real tight connection. Since these are both brand new, I didn't bother putting any Teflon in between it, but if it does start to leak, I'll just go ahead and unscrew this, and I'll put some of that white Teflon tape on the threading, and I'll just re-thread it back on again. But this is pretty much it for installing an inline water filter. Alright, well, take care everyone. Thanks for watching.